Duck's longtime girlfriend. Duck, the Great Western Engine, enjoyed his new life on the Little Western after Oliver, Isabella, and Toad were saved from scrap by Douglas. He had two auto coaches, Alice and Maribel, and Oliver, Isabella, and Toad were joined in by Dulcie. It was all due at times back on the Great Western Railway. He had worked with Natasha, who was also the Great Western Engine, for many decades until he moved on to the island of Sodor. He felt left out, that he missed her very much, and he wished she could come to work with him on his branch line. But nevertheless, it didn't stop him from talking endlessly about the engine. The others took no notice. It wouldn't be long before Duck could later talk about the importance of the Great Western Way. But as time went on, Duck soon found himself feeling quite low. He did his work, but for some reason, he just couldn't find a smile. Something was troubling poor Duck. He knew what it was, but he was worried the other engines would laugh at him. After all, he had been boasting about Natasha, but it also recently occurred to Duck that Natasha was a fine engine, and they were the tank engines. Duck knew there was one engine who could possibly help him. He was taking freight cars to the chute on the small railway, so he could take the ballast train to the unsafe track near the vicarage orchard, where Trevor the traction engine lived anyway. So he hoped Edward would solve his problem. Unfortunately, as Duck arrived to pack some ballast under the line near the vicarage orchard, Edward was called away to take the children to the seaside. "Well, since Edward is unavailable for me to talk about Natasha, who will I talk to?" he wondered. "That'd be me," boomed a familiar voice. Duck almost jumped with surprise and looked back. Who should roll up alongside Duck but BoCo, the Metropolitan Vickers Diesel Electric Type 2. "Hello, Duck. Why the long face?" asked BoCo. "Didn't you like working on the Little Western, your new branch line?" "I liked it there," replied Duck sadly. "But you know, I'm just thinking about someone I've known for a long time anyway." "Who's that?" asked BoCo. "Well, ever since my girlfriend Natasha and I worked on the Great Western Railway for a long time until I transferred to the island before Daisy, 2 sets of twins, you, Bear, and my cousin Oliver. I've been a bit low of myself. I just loved her so much, but I missed her, and I just don't feel like I could ever compare to her, just Oliver and my friend's city of Truro." BoCo listened carefully. "Seeing City of Truro and Oliver reminded me of Natasha back on the Great Western Railway," replied Duck, "especially when I used to run the Sunshine Line, but I suppose I'll never see that chance ever again." Before BoCo could say anything else, Duck puffed away with his freight cars and limped back to the Little Western after the workmen placed the ballast to prevent the track from getting derailed. "Poor fellow," sympathized BoCo. He decided that it was time to talk to Sir Topham Hatt. BoCo managed to finish his work for the day and headed over to Edward Station. Sir Topham Hatt had just congratulated Edward for taking the children, including the grand ones, to the seaside. Edward was pleased with his job. "Excuse me, sir," called BoCo. "Could I have a word?" "Of course, BoCo," said Sir Topham Hatt. "What can I do for you?" BoCo quickly explained about Duck. "I see," said Sir Topham Hatt when BoCo had finished. "So you were talking about Duck's girlfriend on the Great Western Railway, right?" asked Edward. That also the Great Western engine I heard about before you came after him and the twins. That's right, approved BoCo. Well then, tell Doug not to worry, BoCo, said Sir Topham Hatt. I'll be making arrangements straight away. With that, he went back to his car and headed off to his office at the big station. Edward just grinned at BoCo as he, Aurora, Ariel, and Anna set off. BoCo was glad he told Sir Topham Hatt about Natasha, the Great Western engine, and the girlfriend of Duck's. If there was only one person who knew the problem of an engine, it was always Sir Topham Hatt. It took a long time for Sir Topham Hatt to make the arrangements, but once everything was ready, he assured BoCo to keep Duck's spirits high until his surprise came. A few days later, the island of Sodor's peace and quiet was unexpectedly disturbed by a loud, shrill Great Western whistle. Natasha had first arrived after Sir Topham Hatt and her old owner had arranged for her to arrive for a few days, just for a pioneered Great Western tank engine. Duck was not the wiser until later that day that when BoCo came to see him and told Duck to go to the Osborne station. Duck smiled broadly when he saw who was waiting for him.
Hello, Duck,
called Natasha. It's been so long since I left the Great Western Railway to work on this island, and I thought I'd never see you again. Duck was speechless, tearfully. I don't How did... What? Natasha chuckled.
It was all down to Sir Topham Hatt.
She chuckled.
He told me that you were a bit under the weather, so I'm here to make sure that we turn that smile, so I'm here to turn that frown into a Great Western smile.
Duck felt happier for the first time in weeks. Sir Topham Hatt was called to purchase Natasha's stay on Sodor, and she enjoyed the little Western branch line. She soon made friends with Oliver, Donald, Douglas, Toad, the auto coaches, the small engines on the railway, and Algy. As time went on, Duck began to tell Natasha his many adventures from crashing into the barber shop after his encounter with Diesel to dealing with Bulgy, the double-decker bus, for his twisted behavior. Natasha was surprised, but amazed.
You've been through some events like that,
she said to her boyfriend. You can say that again, smiled Duck. I mean, it's like we always said before. There are two ways of doing things.
The Great Western Way,
added Natasha. Or the wrong way, chorused the two engines. This annoyed the other engines, but some of them were pleased they had a lot in common. And Duck was glad Natasha stayed with him on the Little Western for a time of his life.